Greetings, everybody! Welcome once more to Dracovin Empire. It is I, your Lord Emperor and Guide here, Tian Xia Dracovin, who's going to lead you once again to the world of Golarion, back into its deep past, to learn about the Jade Hegemon Empire. If you're ready to learn about this, just have to take my hand as I lead you through the portal and take us to Golarion. We'll be going to modern day Golarion. We're just going to look into the past because, honestly, legacy of ancient empires and stuff like that. And I would rather not go into more dangerous time periods. But before we go, a little bit tips in order. Make sure that if you aren't already, subscribe and do all the other various algorithm-related stuffs, and let me know what you think of this location and its fascinating history in the comments below. All right, let's get going. The portal to Golarion awaits. Let's have some fun. We have arrived in the Verdesz jungle. This is not the first time we visited here, nor will it probably be the last time, I've got to be honest. It's not the first time we visited it for some kind of ancient empire. But if you were going to dive deeper into the Jade Hegemon Empire and a lot of the things that are related to its legacy or today or all those kind of things, what sources? What sources did I use? What sources might you want to use? There are 3 books I'd recommend. Mythic Realms, because it deals with the jungle, and then Tian Xia World Guide, because it deals with the jungle, and some talking about the ancient empire. And of course, most interestingly, out of these, that other book right there, our good friend, Rage of Elements. Yeah, Rage of Elements, from right around the Remaster project. That one has information about this. We'll get into it. It deals with the legacy of this so much more than any other source. The Jade Hegemon Empire. Now, I'm not showing off the Empire ruins per se. I'm showing off the Verdesz jungle, and it's built into technically the corpse of a kaiju and stuff like that. But to understand the Hegemon Empire, we have to understand the region it was in. Verdesz jungle. The thing is, the Empire were ancient Moonshire. Now, Moonshire, have you heard about them? Oh, maybe, maybe not. Who are the Moonshire? I'm just gonna say here in secretly, it's Azure. Azure from before the Remaster project. You know how we changed a lot of things and redid stuff, and these were already a different version of them. So like our fiery, kind of dwarfy guys from the Plane of Elements, Moonshire. So, and I'm also probably not saying their name. Formally, Azers. They had an empire in southern TNZ. The Jade Hegemon Empire is the name that we use, but it really wasn't the actual name. Its actual name is gone. Not that you couldn't find it out by asking people that were around during that time, because, spoilers for the end of this video, there are people that were around during the time still in existence. Moonshares are kind of nigh immortal. Anyway, they were known for geoengineering projects in the Elemental Empire. And a lot of the artificial aspects of Verdesz jungle, less natural aspects, a lot of the nature of it, and things like the kaiju are a result of that. Let's dive into that. Let's dive into that time period first. And we have to go back to the primordial days of the Age of Monsters, as it was called on TNZ, or the Age of Serpents, as it's called in the other parts of in many other parts of the world. So this is an ancient age. This is before the earliest human civilizations. We are in a primordial age. Other than the Skemen civilizations, the Serpent folk, the only other major civilizations that are developing during this time in the rest of the world are Golarion, the Cyclops Empire, which lasted for quite a while. We have our great group from the Plane of Fire, the Moonshire. Now, they're escaping something in the Plane of Fire to create the civilization here in the jungle. We're gonna get into what happened in the Plane of Fire a little bit later with their former empire there, but this is kind of like assumed to be a time period when they're trying to flee away from something going on there, but before other things happen that results in them eventually abandoning here, but they also were on the abandonment because of other things happening. We'll get into it. We'll get into it. Anyway, subjects of the Hegemon were promised liberty, order, dignity. So, more than just the Moonshare, joined them during this time period. At its height, it had a territory that spread across the entire width of southern Tian Xia. Now, the Age of Legend came, and this proved to be the end of the Jade Hegemon Empire. And the major moment of that is the Valashai arriving. The, alien giant lizard people that conquered that region that, would be defining the other defining empire, go see my video on it, in this region, which it's named after, showed up. Munchers disassembled their major cities, retreated to the mountains, rebuilt those cities in said mountains. Yes, that's a thing they actually did. The Valashai showed up and basically said, here's some really nice, foundations you've left here. Thanks. So, a lot of Valashai locations are built on what remains of Jade Hegemon locations, but they also rebuilt them in mountains, and then eventually left Tian Xia and Golarion. They disappeared. Sure, they rebuilt these cities deep in the mountains and volcanoes and places, but then they just disappeared. Sometime in the interim time. They were gone, and with it, the Empire fell. They basically retreated, left, when aliens showed up and conquered the region, and never came back. But there was other things going on, I will say. And we do have to remember, the entire region there is shaped by the Jade Hegemon. Their geoengineering, legendary. They did things like weaponize volcanoes, create self-replenishing emerald mines, create powerful guardians, some of which have turned into kaiju or other horrors. Our good friend, the kaiju Kawak, who I've talked about it multiple times, go see my Valashai Jungle episode, go see my kaiju episode, is basically believed to form by the land, not by the Jade Hegemon, but as a reaction to their powerful magics and basically projects that the land created a kaiju to fight back. Basically, their geoengineering supplanted the native flora and fauna. One of the last bastions is the skin of a single forest dragon, Arnaham. You can learn about him in the TNZ World Guide. So yeah, Valashai Jungle is technically artificial. It's wild. Now we have to turn to the Muncher. And I don't have a great picture of him, but this is a Muncher. We have to talk about one in particular. We talked about the kaiju, we talked about the time period this is in, the Age of Serpents. We have to talk about the All-Father Verdesz himself. Verdesz, leader of the Azure Empire of the Munchers, Lord of Emberkeep on the Plane of Fire, a powerful being, also known as the Jade Hegemon. Yeah, the current leader of the Munchers, as of Golarion in 4723, is the same guy who ruled the Hegemon Empire. Yeah, he is a Muncher breathed in instead of red flame, green flame, distinct from the red flames that most Munchers has, and he has copper skin pitted with turquoise patina. He is a unique one who has ruled over the Muncher for well over 60,000 years. Yeah, it wasn't until the freedom of the Munchers, which we'll talk about with the Azure Empire in a minute here, because the Azure Empire leads into the Jade Hegemon Empire and back to the Azure Empire, but basically, for 66,666 years, he basically was in the service of someone else and his people. And now they're free. But you have to think, that's how long ago the Empire, the Jade Hegemon Empire, probably was. This is like way back in time. Way back. It's unfortunately one of those things is when we talk about like the Age of Serpents, we don't have great dates. We know when the Age of Legends happened, when it ended. But when it began, Hard to say. That's definitely a tough one to say. Yeah. This is like full thousands upon thousands of years. Ancient times. Insane times. So. And the Age of Legends probably was a lot longer than we think about it, the pre-Earthfall time period. And the Age of Serpents, also pretty long. These are like massive time periods. So when I say like nearly 67,000 years, I'm not batting an eye. Let's talk about the Azure Empire, briefly, to kind of understand all this. So, now that we know 67,000 years have passed since the fall of the Azure Empire, kinda, we have to assume the Jade Hegemon Empire was linked with the Azure Empire. Why? Well, the Azure Empire was a great empire, but it fell, and then it fell to betrayal. It basically controlled most of the Plane of Fiery for a time period, and it had its capital in Emberkeep. The Allfather Verdesz basically was the leader of this time period. And again, that's when we also know about the Jade Hegemon during this time period, but basically, the Azure Empire faced destruction with a conflict with Ifrites and the Domain of Fire. The Ifrit, other than them, I haven't looked much into the Domain of Fire, but the two of them basically conquered the iron cities of the Monshare, destroyed a lot of them, reseeded them until only Emberkeep remained. So we can assume sometime during this great battle between them, which may have lasted for thousands upon thousands of years, the Jade Hegemon Empire was founded, basically maybe as a colony, a way to try to survive what was going on in their own homeland. Eventually, with the threat of the Valashai, they basically probably couldn't use this kind of bastion on another plane to survive. Again, we're not sure exactly. We know that these two have to be deeply connected, but we also know that this might have also been an offshoot of it that was trying to rebuild it. It's hard to say, because of what happens with the deals with saving the Azure Empire and the Monshares. They forged an alliance with Fire Scamps, aka Fire Mephits, of the ninefold matriarch of Holy Sublimation. The two of them worked together to save the day. But in the end, the ninefold matriarchs basically betrayed and conquered Emberkeep and ended the Azure Empire. They basically subjugated the Monshares and sacrificed their armies to fend off the Divinion of Flame. Now, the betrayal was part of a deal, though. That's the important thing. In the end, this betrayal and conquest supplemented the Monshare for 66,666 years. Yeah. That's the entire fascinating thing about it, is it was a betrayal and subjugation for a period of time, but it had a deal to it. So the Azure Empire disappeared until 2 years ago. 4723. Basically, the deal ended. And, according to the deal, the Fire Scamps both gave them back and helped them basically reconquer Emberkeep. So now, the Azure Empire has returned. It owns Emberkeep again. What remains of... They only own Emberkeep. They would hope to be there. So basically, the Plane of Metal is back. Emberkeep is back. The Monshares are basically flocking to Allfather Verdesz once again to rebuild their empire on the Plane of Fire and the multiverse beyond. So they might show up on Golarion where they had holdings. Again, there's some muddliness with the exact time period. We know these two are linked. And that's kind of leads us to today, I think we can kind of talk about the Valashai jungle. Because evidence of Valashai, the Azure Empire, and their Golarion branch, the Jade Hegemon Empire, exists. They were both ruled by Verdesz, the Allfather, the Jade Hegemon. We can see why he was called the Jade Hegemon. The entire green flame and made of like bronze and stuff and very green. Yeah, of course, in Tian Xia's name, Jade Hegemon. It makes so much sense. But it's also this like fascinating thing of like, when did he rule this time period? We know that, I don't think time passes that differently between the planes, but it's like kind of this fascinating thing of like, the Muncher had their great empire on their home plane, had part of an empire on Golarion, lost both of them. Now are rebuilding them. Now it's coming back. The great threats in the plane of fire are long gone. The scamps saw to it that the Muncher did that in their servitude to them. We're going to make sure you do the job for us and beat these guys' asses. Together we can win. Most of you will die, but together we'll win. So we're in a strange place where we have the possible ancient empire, because it kind of is, but yet kind of isn't, returning, and how much of their geoengineering still exists. Because they didn't really have to use anything like that in the plane of fire. Maybe they did in their great cities. We don't know. A nameless ancient empire of elementals that was once connected to their empire in the plane of fire. It could have just been that Verdesz had two different empires that, you know, he ruled over that were disconnected because of the planar entire thing, so he kept them kind of separate but ruled over both of them at the same time. That sounds crazy, but who knows? It's just one of those things that we know so much about both of them, and I would love to explore more and dive into this, and maybe a story related to, with the rebirth of the Azure Empire. Maybe Verdesz sets his sight back in the Valashai jungle on some old places there. Some places that once were his people's. Wants to revisit it. Who knows? But, yeah. That's the Jade Hegemon Empire. A fascinating empire which technically doesn't exist, but also kinda does. Because it's like the Azure Empire of the Munchers spawned the Jade Hegemon Empire, but also survived after it and is back after, you know, nearly 7,000 years. And it's weird because, like, the scamps helped Munchers reestablish themselves after the deal. So it's almost as if, like, sure, we tricked you and did the deal, but you did your job well, and now so we're willing to let it go and help you out. There's politics at work in the plane of fire that we're not aware of. Pretty big politics. And maybe that's a topic for another day, dealing into the everything that's going on with these big groups in the plane of fire, because it's just fascinating, and Rage of Elements dives deep into that. So, yeah. But this is just an insanity that I love, because it's sort of like the guy who ruled this empire I'm talking about still exists today, and is now in charge of another empire that is a rebirth of an empire he had 67,000 years ago. Yeah. And we'll leave things there after this insane dive into a weird part of Golarion lore that, spoiler alert, is all in the remaster project. Thank you, latest up-to-date stuff for Golarion. You ain't rewriting this stuff. This is crazy, and I love it. But if you want to see more stuff like this, you can always join me live over on Twitch if you can't join me on YouTube for it. Again, YouTube's a great place to see all my tabletop related content, but I record videos like this. I have live plays that you can see. Again, archived over on YouTube, but things like Fall of Avonswell, you can catch it live Wednesdays at 8, discussing tabletop, where we talk about news of the week, deeper discussion topics. That's Saturdays at 6. You can catch that all there. Gaming and chatting and other stuff too. But again, you can't join me live over on Twitch. YouTube, that's the best place to be. That's where, if you are over there, and you can't join me live, you have to make sure that you are subscribed. I talked about at the beginning, make sure you are. And let me know what you think about this crazy set of empires in the comments below. I would love to see what you people think, what the people out there think about it. I'm just curious what everybody thinks. Anyway, check out my social medias for updates on schedules, all those kind of things, uploads, and stuff like that. Discord's really the best place and time to reach me. And until the next time, we dive into Golarion and some other role-playing topics somewhere else. I bid all of you out there a deep and wonderful farewell.